I wish I could speak. Hello, Andy from BarLifeUK here with another quick cocktail competition tip, and this one is for competition judges. If you've been bartending for a few years, or if you work for a spirits brand, it's quite likely that you'll get asked to judge a competition at some point. Funny thing is, no one ever really teaches you or trains you how to do that. They just expect you to sit down at the bar and know how to judge a competition. So with that in mind, here are 4 tips to help you do a good job when you judge your first comp. First and most important tip is to remember that you are there to assess the bartenders, not to get in their way or make life difficult for them. If there's a question you want to ask, or perhaps you want to taste one of the bartender's ingredients, think really carefully before you interrupt them in mid-flow. Some bartenders can cope with that kind of interruption, but others will be completely put off by it and get flustered, especially if they're nervous. So that poorly timed question by you could ruin their entire presentation. So unless there's a really pressing reason for you to interrupt a bartender and ask them a question whilst they're in mid-flow, consider waiting to the end of their presentation when you can ask as many questions as you want, you can taste as many ingredients as you like, with no danger of putting them off and ruining their performance. Tip number 2 is about being discreet with your discussions. When a bartender finishes their performance and hands the drinks over, you might feel the urge to discuss what you're tasting or how you're scoring with your fellow judges. But bear in mind that the bartender who has just finished will be cleaning down the station for a good minute or two whilst you're doing the judging. And beyond that, the next competitor will be taking their spot to set up. So you don't want any of your conversations to be overheard by the competitors. If there's any negative feedback to be given, it should be done at the end of the competition in a constructive and formal setting. It's also worth being mindful that when you take your first sip of the drink, the person who made it is going to be staring you squarely in the face, trying to gauge your reaction to what you're tasting. And I'm not saying for 1 minute that you need to make super yummy noises every time you taste a drink, but just be aware that the person that made the drink is watching you when you sip it. And again, any negative feedback that needs to be given should be done at the end of the competition, not via a horrified facial expression. Tip number 3 is about showing respect to the bartenders who are competing. And whilst this should seem obvious, I can tell you from personal experience that this stuff doesn't come naturally to everyone. Every competitor will have put hours and hours into their drink and their presentation, and as such they deserve 100% of your attention as a judge. This means don't get drunk as the competition unfolds, and don't be looking at your phone under the bar as they're performing. Because if a competitor gets the sense that you're drunk, or they catch you looking away at your phone whilst they're performing, and they then go on to lose, they're going to naturally believe that your behaviour has played a part in why they have lost the cocktail competition, and that is not going to end up being a positive experience for them. So as a judge, it's important to take proceedings just as seriously and be just as focused as the bartenders competing. Tip number 4 is about giving feedback. At the end of the competition, most, if not all, of the bartenders will approach you and ask for feedback on how they did. And this is a really important part of the process because well-delivered, constructive and actionable feedback can allow a bartender who lost a competition to walk away from the experience still feeling that they got something out of it because they learned something. In my experience, a good way of approaching this is to fill out your judging sheet in such a manner that you can show it to the competitor at the end of the competition, which means that not only have you scored each section, you've written a justification or an explanation of why you've given that number of points, which you can then show to the competitor. Another thing that's worth bearing in mind is that a competition can stretch over 4 or 5 hours, and you can start to forget details about a person's presentation during that period of time. So you need to be thinking about the feedback that you're going to give whilst the person is behind the bar. So in addition to the scoring that is predetermined by the judging sheet, write down 1 or 2 things that you would like to say to that person, whether they win or lose, which will be useful to them. They could be constructive things, they could be praise for things they did particularly well, or it could be notes of things they need to work on. But if you do all of those things, a really well filled out sheet and some bespoke feedback notes for each person, every bartender will walk away from the competition, whether they won or lost, feeling that they got something from the experience and it was a learning process. So that's it. Four quick tips for cocktail competition judges. If you watched this video and you recently judged a cocktail competition with me and you're wondering if I'm talking about you, yes, I am. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye.